The mortgage report does more than silver, although I'm known for silver, but it's also possible that we have hit a breakout. We will get toward that 50 level.
We're starting to see a lot of talk of industrial demand, central bank demand.
Well, the demand is very interesting in the silver market. I mean, silver has had two demands. You're in a perpetual deficit from now as far as the eye can see.
Is there a few producers in Mexico that you see are either expanding their mine production or putting a new one into production? Because I think that might be.
The silver in Mexico, the deeper dive is what I gave you that no one else.
Are you wondering why the price of gold and silver have been rising lately? Are you new to investing in silver in the mining sector? Well, in this interview with David Morgan, we speak about the price of silver, why it's rising, and how to get invested in the Mexican mining sector. The video is packed full of information, so stay right through to the end. And if you do like it, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you have any questions, comment below. So let's get right into it. Good day, everyone, and thank you for watching Financial Liberties. My name is Vin Maru, your host, and today I have a special guest. His name is David Morgan. They call him the Silver Guru, and he's from the Morgan Report. He's an expert in the silver space. He's been involved for probably decades, much longer than I have. I started investing in gold and silver in 2005 and was a research analyst and a mining analyst till about 2013, and I got out of it, kind of when the bull market almost ended then. But I believe we're in this midst of a new resurgence in the bull market, and I'm happy to have David on. So, David, please take a minute to, share some details about yourself, and then let's just dive right into it.
Well, sure. Well, thank you for inviting me, Ben. The best way to get familiar with me, I guess, or the work that we do, it's a group, it's a team, it's not just me, but the website is themorganreport.com. And the best thing to do if you're unfamiliar with us is to get the About tab and pull down the About tab. I'll give my bio, a little bit about the team, a movie that if you haven't watched, I suggest you do called The Four Horsemen film. It's about 12 years old, but everything in that film is still pertinent to today. It's actually, in some ways, more so than ever, as far as how the whole global financial system is at risk. And I'd say that's probably enough of a background. The mortgage report does more than silver, although I'm known for silver. It is my favorite metal, but the mortgage report looks at the resource sector at large. So we were like early on the rare earth elements, battery metals, copper, lithium, cobalt, you name it, we look at it. So we've looked at many minerals and many ways to explore and invest in them over the 2.5 decades we've been publishing.
Perfect. Yeah, I know you've been around for quite a while, and I met some other mining analysts when I was doing coverage and speaking at some of the conferences, and I really respect the coverage that you do. So let's dive into it. Obviously, we want to focus on silver mostly, but the resource sector, the precious metal sector, has really been breaking out lately. I mean, looking at the daily charts on gold and silver, it seems like we're in a breakout. I put up a chart on my X showing a cup and handle formation that's going back from 1980, and the cup finished in 2011. We've been in this handle period. And once silver breaks out, it's at 40-ish right now, but once it hits that $50, that handle is going to be complete. And then we could go blow past 50 and much higher and then go into price discovery. So I'd love to get your thoughts on where we are right now in terms of the price of silver and where you think it's going to go, whether we're going to have a breakdown in silver and it comes back a little bit, or do we see this $50 price and move higher from here? And then we're going to get into the fundamentals that's driving the price of silver right after.
Okay, well, first of all, I'll have to use one of my favorite expressions that the market knows more than any of us. So yours truly included. As far as how we've broken out or not remains to be determined. I use what I call the Morgan rule, which is we've got to see the market on more or less a weekly or monthly basis and a new high. And of course, we just have a few data points above 40. It is interesting to note that if you go back from 1980 to the day we're doing this interview, the amount of trading above the $40 level, back really in the 2011 timeframe. It's only about 2.5, 3 months if I looked at the data correctly. So there's very limited amount of trading above this level. So that means there's not very much resistance, but it's also possible that we have hit a breakout that could turn into a fake out, meaning that it's not sustainable, as you asked the question. And I really don't know at this point. My bias is obviously toward the positive that it is a breakout. It will sustain. We will get toward that 50 level. And if we do, and I think we will, it'll be interesting to see what happens there because we may get those spike highs that we've seen a couple times that last days. I mean, in 1980, it actually lasted minutes. I put up a Twitter feed and I was kind of taking a little bit of a shot at the community and myself too, so many times I said, well, it's $50 in 1980. Yeah, but it's $50 in 1980, according to some of the data I got was like minutes, like 6, 7 minutes from floor traders that are still my age that were there. They said probably an hour, but it wasn't all day. Although we got some closes that were on one of the exchanges, I think at 52.50. Regardless, my point being is that you don't want to look at a market high that lasted minutes being like the ultimate high. I said it was more important to look at the average price for the year, and average price for the year was $20 for the whole year, average price, even though it hit 50 and even though it hit 10.27 on Silver Thursday during that year, those huge extremes, the average price was a little over 20. So, having said all that, we are exploring new territory. I think we're going to continue ahead, but I'm going to stay reserved then and just say, let the market tell us. I'll just watch it for now.
I agree. I mean, you're right that, and you explained it very well in how it was a very limited time where we went into those prices in that year, and it consolidated more or less in that $20 range. I'd be happy even if silver came back to like $35 and just sat and consolidated at this price because it's just overall, I think it's going to be bullish for the market. Um, but that being said, we're hoping that it does break out. And even if it's for a very short period of time, it's a great way to, to put on some trades and take advantage of that breakout if it goes parabolic. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. And then just to make sure, but, be cognitive of taking your profits all along the way up the top and trying to get out before the selling resumes and we come back to a more realistic average price. That being said, we're starting to see a lot of talk of industrial demand, central bank demand, retail demand for silver. What are the big drivers for the price of silver over the last year or two? Sustaining it at the 25, $30 range or higher. And do you think that that demand will continue to increase, or will it wane and we have a retracement on the price of silver?
Well, the demand is very interesting in the silver market. I mean, silver has had two demands for many, many years. And one, of course, is investment demand, and the other is industrial demand. Now, you could look at a breakout of industrial demand being different from, let's say, silverware, which is only about 4% of the market, and jewelry, which can be as high as perhaps 20% of the market. But you could lump jewelry demand into industrial demand if you wish. The point is, industrial demand, meaning things outside of jewelry, is 60% of the market right now. 60%. So if you go back to 25 years ago, the year 2000, and you look at what was the percentage of industrial demand in 2000, it was 35%. So 35% of the market over the last 25 years has gone to 60% of the market. What's more interesting is if you do the math on that, because in 2000, the above ground take of silver in on a global basis was 550 million ounces per year. That's how much silver came out of the ground. Today, it's 850 million ounces. So 35% of 550 is a much smaller number than 60% of 850. In fact, if you look at 60% of that 550, take 6 times 5 is 35, 30. I mean, you're looking at, you know, if we only mine 550 million ounces today, although we're 300 million ounces higher, that 60% would eat up almost all of the silver supply if you add in jewelry and silverware, leaving zero for investment demand. Investment demand is the swing factor because the industrial demand grows not necessarily year over year, but the long term trend is it keeps increasing. And I believe that trend will continue. So there's a gentleman named Matt Watson that I was introduced to by the Silver Institute. He's an independent metals analyst. He doesn't uh, look at mining companies, to my knowledge, but he looks at the metals themselves across the board. I mean, this guy's very bright. I've had a few conversations with him, and I think one or two interviews I've done with him. But he has a chart of the low case for silver demand, supply and demand. And if you look at silver's supply, it's basically 1 billion ounces. Now, I just said we get 850 out of the ground, but we also recycle about 150 million. So you add those numbers together, we get about 1 billion ounces of silver out of the ground. And his projection from now to 2050, so the next 25 years, is that will be steady state, slightly tapering down, not up. Is it true or false? We don't know. It's conjecture. It's a studied conjecture, but nonetheless, we don't know for certain. But I agree with him. But all we know right now, barring a big technological breakthrough or something really big in the market, 1 billion ounces is about all we're going to get for the next at least 5 years, in my view. Now you look at the demand case and you look at photovoltaics, EVs, electronics, electricity demand, brazing and soldering, all these other things. What you're going to find is you're going to see a lot more demand that exceeds the supply, which means you're in a perpetual deficit from now as far as the eye can see, which means you're going to have to eat the above ground stockpile, which we've been doing according to Metals Focus, the Silver Institute, BMO, and many others have stated that we've been in a deficit for 4 or 5 years. And that means that we're going to get a squeeze on the above ground silver supply, which stands, according to the Silver Institute, at about 3.6 billion ounces, which is quite an above ground silver supply. But I analyzed that. And what I discovered was that even at 3.6 billion ounces, it sounds like a big supply to feed into the deficit. It would take years at 200 million ounces per year, which is what the deficit currently is. But if you step back and analyze it further, it's only about 600 million ounces. That's what I call the free float. The rest are in strong hands in coin form, which is about 2 billion of the 3.6 billion. In bar form, about 300 million is in investor form. In other words, 100-ounce bars, kilo bars, 10-ounce bars, that type of thing, which leaves 1.3 billion ounces in commercial bar form, which is the silver market. It's a derivatives market derived on futures trading, but yet, of course, it also factors what the spot price is. So about 600 million of that is in ETFs. So that means right now there's 600 million ounces in what I would call the float. And that's about 3 years worth of silver at 200 million ounces a year, eating away at the silver market based on industrial needs and investment demand. So if we get an increase in investment demand or industrial demand, in demand, period, you could see that go away quite easily. And we know that from the year 2021 when Scott Maynard was at the WEF, better known as Davos in those days, and talked about silver being his go-to investment. And after saying that was his go-to investment, the institutional buying of silver that year, the next year, was 320 million ounces. And I believe most of that was from Guggenheim Investments. He was the chief investment officer. Now, I cannot prove that. It's conjecture on my part. What is factual is 320 million ounces were bought by institutions, an all-time high. If you add the retail investment in that year, which is about 200 million ounces, you're looking at 520 million ounces of demand in that 1 year. And that was in 2021. So could that happen again? Absolutely. So you're looking at that 600 million ounces in the float. If we have another 2021 demand from retail and institutional, you could wipe it out in a year. I'm not saying it's going to happen. What I'm doing is giving you facts. You can draw your own conclusions, but the supply is much tighter than maybe other analysts would propose because they just throw out the numbers. Oh, well, they're only eating a little bit. Some will say there is no deficit. We're not eating the above ground supply. Some will say there are and it's bigger than it is. I try to stay as factual as I possibly can. But those are the facts borne out by most sources, not all. And the deeper dive is what I gave you that no one else, to my knowledge, has talked about, which is how much is really available in commercial bar form versus what the demand could possibly be.
Perfect. There was a gentleman on X. I came across this post. His name is David Bateman. I think I even tagged you on it. Says he bought $1 billion. He was a tech genius, I guess, cashed out, bought $1 billion earlier this year. So it is interesting to see if this retail investor demand continues to grow. Now, whether he actually made the purchase or not, I can't verify it, but he did post it, and I thought it was just interesting, and I've been sharing that out there. So we discussed the price of silver, the fundamentals for possibly it going higher, or just the demand fundamentals in general. Now I'd really like to dive into is just the mining companies, because that's where you're going to get to see a bit of leverage on a rising silver price. And back in the day, I did coverage on miners, and that was kind of my focus. But right now, I'm living in Mexico, and I'd love to talk to you about Mexico being the number one producer of silver in the world, but what you see happening in terms of production in Mexico, and then maybe we can touch on some of the miners that are they're already producing down here, as well as a lot of exploration play that's going on. I mean, that's where you're going to get the highest leverage, I believe, in a silver bull market. Now, I've looked at some of the existing miners that are in Mexico. There's three big companies that are listed on the Mexican Stock Exchange. The price has already risen 100% over the last year, much like other silver miners in the Canadian markets and the US markets. And I'm going to be doing a bit of coverage on those miners in Mexico as well as others here that we discuss. Maybe I'll put a link to the list of companies that we talk about and how people can look at it. But maybe if you could spend some time talking to us about silver mining in Mexico and maybe in Latin America in general.
Sure. So, current state of the Mexico silver production. First of all, generally, the silver in Mexico, silver mining is flat to declining. And that's how many ounces come out of the ground per year. And the reason being is that the grades are falling in many of the major mines. So they're moving the same amount of rock or dirt and getting less silver per shovelful. And that's normal. I mean, basically, you look at the oil situation, it's similar. In other words, mining is usually the biggest discoveries are early on. And as you deplete the big mines, the most rich mines, that depletes and you go to the next level. So there's nothing magic about that. It's just the fact that overall grades are falling in most of the major mines. And it's becoming more expensive and complex to maintain output. So we got to keep that in mind. And if you track silver's price versus cost of production, they track almost one in one. My friend Steve St. Angelo at SRS Rocco does a great analysis on both gold and silver as far as the price versus the cost of production. And gold right now is well above the price of production, where silver has finally broken out above the price of production. But you think, oh, the silver price is going up, and it is, but basically you can't mine at a loss for very long. So if you see the cost of production at 26, 27 the ounce, and silver sitting at 20, you're either going to be out of business or the price is going to rise. So I just want to throw that out there. The risk and benefits of mining in Mexico. The benefits, long history of mining, skilled workforce, established infrastructure. These people know how to mine. Some of the best mining mines in the world, MINDS, are in Mexico. Risk, there's some political risk, but I think that's overblown. I'll talk about that in a minute. Permitting delays, that's another one that needs to be expanded on. Possible rising royalties, and there's some cartel situations that you want in certain areas to be wary of. And that's just a fact, and I'll spell it out. I will talk about that. Many won't, but I will. And we could talk about some of the mines in Mexico when we get to that. The junior explorers are in the mix, but you need to do careful due diligence on those. Although I put my tongue in my cheek when I say that, because in the beginning, it's very important to do the best due diligence you can on the juniors. But there is a point of inflection where it really doesn't matter because the silver market gets so frothy that any mine anywhere that has silver in the name will be bought because it, quote unquote, has silver or is exploring for silver or even just has silver in its name. So, coming back on point, then you can ask me whatever you like. I think I'd like to start with the risks and probably talk about the political shifts if you'd like to start there.
Sure, no, absolutely, please.
Well, the idea is that the new administration in Mexico is anti mining or very reluctant to go. And this is really political posturing. This is more for political points than reality. I have a very strong connection with the mining industry in Mexico. I know some of the top tier at whatever the mining bureau is called, some of the professors in Mexico, Mexico City. And I know that there's a face that's a political one, and then there's reality. And the reality is that mining in Mexico is just fine. That the only real caveat is purportedly open pit mining is going to be curtailed, and anything that's already permitted will not be. So even there, you could get something that's permitted to go ahead with the project. But basically, under the covers, the administration, although they put a different face toward the public, is pretty pro mining. So that's number one. The next one is really permitting delays. I kind of outline that. There is somewhat of a delay. If permits are already in place, they're going to go through. Maybe not be expedited, but there won't be any further delays. Any new ones depends more on the local Haito and community and what's been there before than anything at the federal level. Although they won't tell you that, that's the truth. Now, where you could see some pushback or maybe an argument that, wait a minute, the federal level is pushing back on the mining industry would be the tax or royalties that are imposed. But that is pretty much on a case by case basis. Not that it couldn't enact another, 2% tax across the mining industry or silver mining specifically. I don't really see that, but it could happen. So I just want to voice that. And the last one is cartels. That's a way of life in Mexico, and it's not just the mining industry. It's pervasive throughout a lot of different industries and different regions. It's not something to get all worked up about, but it is something that needs to be considered because every now and again you'll see, even in the mainstream news, where something took place on a concentrate delivery or a doré delivery or whatever that maybe was, taken, held up, delayed, what have you. But again, if you know what's going on, really, those situations can be mitigated. So if you want to ask more on any of those, feel free.
Sure. I mean, I heard a story about yeah, a cartel group lifting some silver. But I imagine these companies have insurance and coverage for that, whether it's through Lloyd's or whatnot. So um, we did some great, with some great information on the risks that are available in Mexico. And I hear a lot about that in other sectors in Mexico, but I'm down here, boots on the ground, and I just see more opportunities than there are risks. In fact, in being in an emerging market, this would be like being in the US and Canada 20, 30 years ago in terms of the business and investment opportunity. So I think it's limited. I mean, there's always risks in any jurisdiction. Look what happened with Panama and the big mine down there. Could that happen here in Mexico? Possibly, but I think it's in their interest not to stop the mining that's already going on here because silver is one. I mean, Mexico is one of the biggest silver producers in the world. So I put it at a lower end of it. Could that change? Absolutely. Um, but we'll take a look. Now there's many companies that are already producers down here. The juniors are the riskier ones, but they do get leverage when the markets are frothy, as you had mentioned. Um, is there a few producers in Mexico that you see are either expanding their mine production or putting a new one into production? Because I think that might be a bit of the sweet spot in terms of the investment idea is you could have a big miner's already got their mines, they're operating and they're producing X amount of ounces. But I think a good potential would be to find maybe a silver miner who's actually in the process of expanding their existing mine or building a new one. Do you know of anything like that that's going on?
Well, first of all, I like to just, give the basis of the Morgan report. I invested in a lot of juniors as a junior and didn't do that well because they're depends where you are in the cycle. If you're early in the cycle, like we are now, the last leg up, I believe, as I said earlier, anything with silver in its name is probably going to run. Not this moment, but later in the cycle. However, when the cycle goes sideways or down, you want to be extremely careful and you want to favor the majors. I favor the majors all the way up. So Fresnillo and Industrias Penoles are probably your two best as far as blue chips are concerned. But Fresnillo has not been meeting, let's say, an expansion profile for some time. Uh, First Majestic, Keith is always looking for adding to their complex of mines, and they continue to do so. Uh, it's been an underperformer for a while, but it's well known. It's got the best symbol on the NYSE as AG. It's one followed by institutions. Vizsla Silver, I think, is one that you might take a look at. And then Mag Silver, which has been taken over by Pan American, was one of our favorites. And we had Mag way back when it was a private placement opportunity. That's how long we followed that company on and off. As far as juniors, there's one that's associated with the Mag team that I have on the list. I'm not going to give it out because that's how I make my living. But according to sources that I trust, it could be, I won't say would be, but could be as big a deposit as Mag itself. So that's something that's one of those juniors you want to buy without reckless abandon. You want to own some. And as the project develops and there's more people moving into it, you could add to your position. But I would just take a rather modest position at this point in time because these things take a long time to develop. Um, I think that may cover it. I mean, Fortuna is more of a gold mine now. They've had issues back and forth. It really hasn't performed to my liking, although it's done okay. But there are several in Mexico, and there are many that could be projects that are not permitted, which going back to what we talked about earlier, you'd want to take a little bit closer look on it, whether or not that would actually be able to come into fruition or not. I've done interviews with one of the gentlemen I alluded to earlier that I do a one-on-one with for my private clients and ask them straight out, what's happening at the federal level, what's happening at the ground level. And I want to back up to what you said earlier about boots on the ground. You're right. I don't live in Mexico, although I've been there numerous times. Probably, I would say more than I can count, but several. And many, many mining projects from, almost the Cancun level right to the border and everything in between, particularly through the Sierra Madre region.
Sure.
And you know, as you said, I mean, you get a different picture from what you see in the mainstream or financial press than what you see boots on the ground. But I want to divert for a moment into Colombia because I went there to inspect the Marmato Mountain, which is a huge mountain in Colombia. And I got off the airplane and I saw the guards with the camo and the guns, and I thought, oh my goodness, because I had all these preconceived ideas about Colombia and how risky it was. And, you got to be on your P's and Q's or you're going to get shot. I mean, really just kind of these made up ideas of my imagination. Turned out outside of the airport, it was probably one of the friendliest places I've ever been in my entire life. And I had no fear whatsoever anywhere I went in Colombia. And Marmotto Mountain was kind of a mess because there are all the artisanal miners, the artistic miners flocking all over the mountain. But I mean, they were mining the heck of it out of that mountain. And it was just really a whole different picture physically being there than what my preconceived idea was. And Mexico's pretty much the same way from every place I've been. Are there problems? Yes. Are there cartels? Yes. Is there pushback at the federal level? In name only, I would say.
Okay.
So you really do what I've done is I look at it on a case by case basis. And I think that's where you do your best because anywhere in any industry, you have, good, better, best. And there's some areas that are good to mine, some that are better, and some are the best. And so I strive to look at the best in the top tier, in the mid tier, and in the junior category and try to just categorize it that way. And that means an individual case by case basis, not a blanket picture. Although we talked about the blanket picture, and you need to have that to put it into context, but you cannot classify them all in, oh, well, all of Mexico wants to curtail mining. You cannot do that.
Perfect. Well, that was some great information on the Mexican market in terms of the silver miners, and I'm glad you touched on Colombia. Um, is there anything, we've only got a few minutes left, so is there anything that you suggest investors be wary of in the market right now, or tips or advice, maybe in a minute or two? What are your best thoughts on something like that before we wrap up?
Really, there isn't. I mean, I'll throw off a non sequitur. I mean, basically, silver is probably the most valuable in terms of use and need and essential qualities for a high tech society like we're in. And in a way, the silver industry has been exploited, in my view, which means Mexico's been exploited, in my opinion. And I think that really, if we had a more of a free market price discovery, that it could be priced commensurate with its value to society at large. And in that context, I think we should see higher prices and that maybe Mexico would really get its due because it is such a valuable mineral.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been talking to some of the bankers here, and I do interviews with investor types and business entrepreneurs here in Mexico. And one of the bankers I was talking to, I kind of questioned how much silver the central bank had. He didn't even know, and he's a regional director of one of the largest investment banks here. I really don't think there's much much available besides the mining companies here in Mexico for investment opportunities. So I think there's potential for this, and which just excites me because I'm going to be reaching out to more people in the financial space in Mexico to kind of talk about some of the sectors I like. And you mentioned that, the future of the futuristic world we're in. One of my investment themes that I like talking about is we're entering what I like to call the Jetsons world. So anything that's related to the Jetsons world investing theme seems to be also good. And in that, you're going to need the metals, and silver is one of the bigger ones that you are going to need, especially with the AI data centers that are being planned and all of this. So I really can't see an environment where we're going to see silver price crash below the cost of mining. It's just, I don't, I mean, it could happen in a black swan event, but outside of that, I think we're at least some stable pricing on silver. So I'd like to wrap it up. Thank you, David, for coming on my podcast, speaking with me. It was great to catch up with you. And I'll leave links to your website. And if you want, if there's YouTube channels or any other social media links that you'd like to share, please send them over. And yeah, thank you for coming on the show.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Well, we hope you enjoyed this interview with David Morgan. He unpacked a lot of information about the silver price, the fundamentals that are driving the silver, and how that should continue. And we kind of put the investment case together on why we think silver should at least remain where it's at right now in terms of price, let alone the fact that it could rise significantly in the coming years. And if things go parabolic, there'll be an amazing opportunity to make some money. And if you stay with us and follow our channel, we're going to show you and uncover many other opportunities in the resource sector, precious metals, gold, silver, all of it, including other sectors we like. And in particular, with a big focus on the Mexican market, the economy here, business and investment opportunities in Mexico. That's going to be a big focus for our channel. So highly suggest you watch my interview with Jesse Day from Commodity Cultures. We talk about gold, silver, uranium, other metals, as well as the resource sector in general, and why we think there's going to be a big commodities boom coming ahead and how you can participate in that. Also, for staying to the end of the video, I do have a special promotion for you. If you'd like a 15-minute consultation with me on how to buy precious metals or how to even consider relocating to Mexico and looking at the business investment opportunities in here, please contact us and I'm happy to provide you a 15-minute consultation. That being said, thank you for watching the video and don't forget to like and subscribe, leave a comment, and we'll talk soon. Cheers.